Shauna and Jody here with Real Sisters, Real Talk.
We're glad to have you joining us as we talk about growing in our faith with God.
Hey, welcome back to Real Sisters, Real Talk. Oh, my Lanta, I cannot even believe we have done 50 episodes together. And last week, what a hoot to have Bailey in studio with us and to just on the fly be able to answer her questions. It was so much fun. In fact, it ended up being a rather long time together. So we had to interrupt that episode and we're going to give you the rest of it today. But we just want to say, Jody and I both, just how much we appreciate you and just how grateful we are that you're on this journey with us. Enjoy part 2 of the 50th episode celebration of Real Sisters, Real Talk.
I would love to hear why did you guys start Real Sisters, Real Talk? And if there's anything that you could tell your listeners or anything that you want them to know about why you do this or what it looks like to have a podcast, what would you tell them? So kind of a twofold question. Why did you start? And then what do you want your listeners to know?
Yeah. So I think to explain why we started the podcast, it really was not our idea. It was something that just God kind of revealed to us in time. So Shauna and I, this summer before we started, both felt at different times called by God to begin writing, potentially to be books, which is even still hard for me to say. So we started that process and we were able to talk about it because we both felt God calling us to that individually. And as we did that, we did a seminar on book writing. And as we processed out some of the things we learned in that seminar, we just kind of talked about, wouldn't it be fun to do a podcast to talk about how we, or to model out how we have our spiritual conversations all of the time? Because Shauna and I call each other and we say, I am learning this. And so often, even though we live in different places, the other one will say, oh my goodness, I'm learning that too. God is showing me this and this. And so we learn from each other and that helps us grow. And so we wanted to model that out in a podcast. So kind of it was a growing thing. When we started talking about doing a podcast, we literally had no idea how to do that. And we didn't have to know because God provided the next step every step of the way. And so we got to see God at work in that process. But it kind of came organically out of our own growth and out of our own conversations that we have had for years and years and years over the phone. And we just literally wanted to model that out and share it with everybody. And so we're so grateful that you listen and you want to join us on the journey. It's just crazy to us. It's just been so much fun.
Yeah, if I can piggyback on that, I would say that I think one of the greatest tactics of the enemy is for him to kind of plant the seed in us that what we're going through, that we're just totally alone. Like nobody else is going through what you're going through. In some ways, I think it kind of makes us feel special, but it also can make us feel a little bit crazy and question our journey. And so it has been such a blessing to be able to, I mean, honestly, a lot of our conversations will start out about family, or they'll start out about, we're sharing a recipe, or what are you doing right now? Or, on your workout, blah, blah, blah. It's like life stuff. And then it turns into what God is doing in our lives and how we're learning and growing spiritually. And it's like, what if you didn't have somebody to have these conversations with? Like, what if we could have the conversations and not have them just be between you and me, but we could invite other people into the conversation, to listen into the conversation so that they would know, hey, maybe I'm not crazy. There are other people who are walking this journey, and there are other people who are learning these things, and they're not perfect, and they're not, they're just like me. They're people just like me who are pursuing Jesus, who want to be like Jesus, who don't always get it right, who love him passionately, are not okay with not getting it right, want to please him, but live in grace as they just keep going. And we've had life hit us from, on different levels, the different things that have entered our life that have made life difficult and that have challenged us. And sometimes even in those hardest moments are some of where I don't know, I kind of all of a sudden am just picturing like a potter at a wheel. And it's like sometimes it's those moments of greatest pressure that make the most beautiful movement or shapes to the pottery as it's in the potter's hands. And so, yeah, the podcast just really felt like this is a way that we can widen the circle and invite more people into the conversation and hopefully create community where you don't feel like you're alone in walking out your journey of following Jesus.
Yeah. So I would say too, we've never come at this as experts because we're not. We're just doing life, and we want to be able to do life together with you. And so that's what we bring when we're in these conversations together. And one of our heart's desire as we did this podcast is that you would feel like you maybe got a cup of coffee and we're sitting across from each other as we just share life and what we're learning as we walk in this life with God. And so we hope that that's how you feel, that you're just a part of the conversation. But that's kind of where it all came from.
Yeah. And as a listener of the podcast, I obviously hear what you guys are saying, and I am encouraged by what you guys are sharing. So my question to you is, how are you guys, or how have you guys been encouraged as you have produced this podcast? As the people who are talking and sharing, how have you been encouraged? Because I know for a fact that your listeners have been encouraged. So
Thank you, baby.
Yeah.
You want to take that one first, Shauna?
Sure. Thank you for that. Yeah. That's the hope, is that other people are encouraged as they're listening in. And I think one of the things, there's a couple of different things that come to mind. One is when we talk about what the content is going to be for each episode, when we decide what the subject matter is going to be, we prayerfully consider that. And we trust that the Lord is leading us in that, and that He is opening up conversations that are going to hit hearts and speak to what He wants us to know about Him. And so because we are genuinely having the conversations one with another, Jody and I, we're learning and we're being blessed in every single episode. So to be honest with you, we record them slightly in advance. And so when they're released, I'm not kidding, there are times when I have listened to our podcast once it's been released, and I'm like, oh, Jesus, thank you. That was just what I needed to hear, what Jody said right there. Or, so I've been blessed in that way. Another way that I've been blessed by doing the podcast is hearing the responses back from listeners and having, your willingness to ask us questions and say, how do you do a quiet time? Like, what does that look like? What does that mean? It's like this Christianese term, and I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what that means. And it's probably different for every single one of us, but to have the boldness to ask that question and to say, thank you. Let's open that up and let's talk about that, and pull back the curtain on the, mysticism of what happens in your comfy chair when you open up your Bible. Like, what is going on between you and Jesus? Like, to just demystify it and talk about those things. So I've been blessed, man. Every time we get feedback from you, it's a blessing.
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything you just said. I think anytime we have a spiritual conversation, we grow in our faith. We're encouraged. It stretches us. So I might be learning something, but when Shauna shares something, it's a whole different perspective. And so it broadens my perspective or my understanding and my learning. And so we're learning as we share together as well. And then as far as like hearing from our listeners, when you email or message us on Instagram and ask us to like explain something or model something out, anytime we have to put something like that into words and process it out, we learn and we grow. And so it just helps us articulate that. Even if I get a chance to share with somebody else at a restaurant or something, those thoughts have already been processed through. So it grows me and helps me communicate even better in those moments. And so I just think Shauna and I learn so much and grow so much by doing this. And then we're so encouraged when we get to hear from you. And sometimes we'll hear comments like, oh, this is one of my favorite verses, or when I did a biblical mandate, I did it this way. And we get to learn because we
Right.
have we get to hear from different voices. So we love that too.
Yeah, I just want to like pull out one thing that I heard in that is that both of you love hearing from your listeners. Like you want to engage with the listeners and the people who are hearing your voices. And so I hope that's an encouragement to everyone who's watching and listening to the podcast. Like reach out and talk to my Auntie Jody and my Auntie Shauna because they're cool people. Okay, my next question is like talking about this podcast, what is the plan? Like as you look forward, we are 2 weeks away from doing this for a year. You guys doing this, not me, but you guys doing this for a year. So yeah, what is your guys' plans? What are your hopes for this podcast? I would love to hear just what you guys are thinking.
Yeah, I'm gonna throw that to Sean in just a second, but I just want to address one thing that Bailey just said. So honestly, we bounced a lot of this off of Bailey before we started. So kudos to Bailey because she actually really helped us get this launched. So just want to say a huge thank you and recognize her in this process. She's been such a huge support, helped us set up our website and all of that stuff. And also thanks to Pete, who does all of our editing and gets us up, and so that you can hear us each week. And so just really grateful to our team. So Shauna, I'm going to bounce the question Bailey asked to you first.
Yeah. So what are our hopes? What do we see around the corner? I'll tell you one thing that I hope for and I long for is when I get back to California, we would love to have our other two sisters join us in studio and do a podcast with all four of the girls. If we could have Mom join us too, that would be amazing. So Grandma, wouldn't that be so fun? Grandma and all the sisters.
That would be amazing.
That would be amazing. But there should be there will need to be a warning label on that one, because there have been times that the sisters have gotten together and we're like in a restaurant and we have so much fun together that we become unaware of our surroundings at times, and we can hit hit some pretty serious decibels and get some volume going on. But anyway, we have a very good time together. So that is one of my hopes, is that when I get that way and we can all be in the same room together, that we can get all the sisters and Mom together for an episode.
Yeah, that would be so fun. I'm sure Bailey has some stories about our volume when all the sisters get together. So I think we didn't really know what it was going to look like a year later, and here we are. We kind of wondered, will we run out of things to talk about? And clearly that's not an issue. So I think our hopes and dreams are that this podcast will continue to move forward and bring God glory. And we want to do it until he tells us not to anymore. And there's always more for us to learn. There's always more growing to be had. And so we would just love to continue to do that and invite you on the journey. So that's kind of our hopes and dreams. Sean and I do pray into what we're going to talk about, and we feel like God has really been leading us in that each step of the way. So we're so grateful for that, and we'll just continue to do that.
That is awesome. Okay, so one of my favorite questions to ask, and I think this might be our last just for time, but I think back to some of the podcasts that you guys have done in the past, and you talk a lot about community, and I feel like you guys talk a lot about your friends and the people who you do life with. And so one of my favorite questions is, who is your best friend and why are they your best friend? Like, what do you see in them? What drew you to them? How have you learned from them? And you don't have to name names if you don't want to, call people out. But I would love to know, the characteristics of who your guys' best friends are. Yeah. Tell me about them.
You want to go first, Jodes?
Sure. So I'm not trying to be sappy. I would say my very best friend in the world is my husband. He's the one who knows me the most. He loves me in spite of all that. And I can be completely 100% honest and vulnerable with him. So I would hands down say he's my best friend. My best girlfriend, other than sisters, my best girlfriend would be my sweet friend Kelly. I've talked about her before on the podcast. And we have walked or met for coffee for the last 19 years, early on Friday mornings. We've done life together. We have gotten our kids through school, through hard things. We have now gotten a couple of our kids married off and just really been able to do life together. And there's a lot of grace for each other. There's a lot of building up. There's a lot of pointing each other to Christ. There's not judgment, but a lot of love and understanding, and just an ear that's always willing to listen and kind of hear you out. And so I'm so grateful to be able to do life with her over so many years. She has 4 girls. I love her girls like they're mine. And so it's just been a real joy to be able to do life for so long together with somebody. So yeah, just grateful for that safe place to share, a place where someone will speak truth to me and who equally loves the Lord and wants to live for him. So.
Yeah. So follow-up question, like what in her personality do you appreciate? What drew you to her? And what do you want to like celebrate about Kelly?
I would say she is kind. She is such a servant. She will literally be there for you, step in for you, serve you in any way that she can, and never complain or expect anything back. She just has such a servant heart, and she consistently shows up. And so, yeah, those are kind of strong things I see that I'm just so grateful for in her.
And I don't want to speak for you, but I have heard you mention over and over how much you appreciate her creativity.
Oh my goodness. She is so gifted and so creative, and that is so not me. And so she kind of like fills that piece for me. And I'm so grateful for her. She'll design logos for us. She designed our Real Sisters Real Talk logo. And so our wording and stuff. So we're just really super grateful for her.
Awesome. Yeah. I love it. Auntie Shauna, what would you say? Who's your best friend and why are they your best friend?
All right. I do not have one best friend. I have multiple really, really good friends. And one of my closest friends and dearest friends I've walked with through so many years, we met when I was in my early 20s. And at that time, she had a son who was in high school, a daughter who was in middle school, and a son who was in elementary school. And she invited me and Dan over for Tuesday night tacos. Every Tuesday night, we went to their house and did life together with them. And we just became closest, most precious friends and still are to this day. So she's obviously seasons ahead of me. Don't hate me for saying that, dear friend. I love you. But she is seasons ahead of me at this point in life. And that has been such a gift to me because she's gone ahead. She's already been where I'm going in life. And I love that I can process anything with her. And she comes at it from a point of understanding because she's already been there to that place, that season. And she comes with wisdom, not just understanding, but like wisdom for how to walk through that. And I need that. I love about her that she is a truth teller. I remember the moment that she came to visit when I had my second child, when I had Drayson, and I had Bryn in the stroller and Drayson in the stroller, a 2B one. Anyway, Bryn kept saying she wanted to get out. She wanted to get out. And I said, no. I kept telling her no. And then at one point my friend and I were in this like great conversation and Bryn was whining. And I just reached in, picked her out and put her next to the stroller and kept talking with my friend. And she goes, hey, hang on. I don't get that. And I said, I'm sorry, what? And she goes, you have been telling her for like an hour and a half that she could not get out of the stroller. And you just took her out of the stroller. What happened there? I was called out. And this is one of the things that I love about her is that she is a truth teller. And when she sees me not lining up with who I say I want to be or living life that I say that I want to live, she calls me out on it. So I love that. And then I have a very good friend who has 2 littles at home. And she is one of my closest friends and one of my favorite people. And I adore spending time with her. She's super creative. She's full of life. She's full of joy. She loves, both of these people love talking about Jesus. It's kind of a must for me because I I like talking about shoes. I like talking about food and stuff like that. But like I love talking about Jesus. So that's important. And then I have another friend who is more of a peer, kind of in the same season of life that I'm in. And she has incredible strength. Like she's so confident in who she is, and just even in her posture and the way that she carries herself. Like she walks into the room and you're like, dang, that girl knows who she is. And I love that about her. And I want some of that to rub off on me. But yeah, lots of good friends. And that's why.
That is awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for sharing.
We're so grateful that you were willing to do this for us. So it's so fun to have our first guest be our sweet niece, Bailey. We adore you. And so thank you for coming and doing this with us.
Yeah, I was happy to. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Hey, and thank you for spending time with us. Whether you just kind of stumbled across Real Sisters Real Talk and you're like, what? 50 episodes. There's a lot there for you to go back and catch up on if you want to, but we're going to keep dropping a new episode every week so you can kind of keep in step with us that way too. But whether you just kind of stumbled across us or you've walked with us through the last year, thank you for giving us some of your time. Thanks for being willing to be on the journey with us and to learn together with us. And as always, we want to leave you with this. We want you to know that we serve a real God and he really loves you.